so let's get started. I have that it's 5:03. I'd like to call to order. Councilmember Matheson.
Here.
I'm here. Scott Harrington is not here today. Did you have a chance to take a look at the minutes?
I did,
Son?
yes, I.
Okay, any questions or?
Well, as we go through it. Oh, you're
Comments?
talking about the minutes?
The
No, I
minutes?
have no problem, no questions.
Okay, all right, so we'll pass those, we'll accept those minutes, and we'll move on to our first topic, which is, excuse me, about the occupancy tax for the city. This is to
Well, this is the.
further our discussion on the amount, if we were to impose this, if we would like to do this, any restrictions, and then moving to some kind of resolution.
Well,
So-
one of the questions I had is, for example, who would be paying it for, not only the visitors, but for example, I think it's Motel 88 on Chestnut Street. Would the tenants there be paying, because they're usually like social service is paying for that? You know?
So short-term rentals, it's less than 30 days or less. So if they have a longer-term lease agreement or rental agreement somewhere, then they would not be subject to it. But if you're defined as short-term, then you would pay.
So who, the people who stay at that are, receiving benefits, who's paying that, and would they have to pay the tax?
I don't know how those lease agreements or rental agreements are made between them, but the operator of the motel would have to collect that tax and remit
Because it
that.
doesn't seem logical if they're, if it's like the county or something that's paying it, that we would tax the county. That doesn't make sense. So what I'm trying to figure out is,
Wouldn't it be, if they are receiving any sort of benefits from the state would be absorbing that as
right,
part of
but
that
we wouldn't want to
agreement?
tax the state, is what I'm saying, or the county, who's ever paying it, in the case of when it's, people who are homeless, or whatever the situation is,
Mhm.
it wouldn't make sense to tax them, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Just, maybe the way to figure it out is if the county, which is already collecting the tax, see what they do. Would that be a way to?
Yeah, I don't think, given that it's they would be within the social service, the purview of the state, I would assume that the agreement would include any taxes, that would include county, and then if we included a city tax as well. I don't think it would be that they would be exempt, nor do I think they should be exempt, because they would be not necessarily individual payers themselves, right? The state is actually
Yeah,
what's the term for when
it
you
just
pay
didn't
for
make
a
sense to me to
hotel
have
bill?
the county or the state pay, an occupancy tax. But
And why would that not make sense?
just, like one level of government is taxing another level of government.
I
Just didn't
see.
make any sense to me.
I see.
No, I think, I don't know the answer for certain off the top of my head, but a tax exempt entity, I believe, would be exempt
Potentially.
Okay.
from taxes. So,
Right.
So you're saying
Yeah.
if it's social services, there would be maybe an exemption? Yeah.
Okay, well, we should look into that.
Yeah, I think the question of social services is an interesting one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a question we could bring to council too, as part of the discussion. Any other questions that were raised, just taking a look at this? I think we should just move this directly to the discussion agenda.
I agree.
To take it back.
And
Given that the
and
action needed was to really just to continue where we left off, right?
Right, and it
From
also
our
makes sense to me
previous-
to, if we're gonna do it, make it the same as the town, which I think is 6%. Right?
Yeah, yes,
county.
yes, county,
County?
yes.
Okay, county.
Okay. So I think our discussion on Tuesday should be whether or not we want to do this, like the discussion, the motion should talk about whether or not could
Mhm.
vote on that, and then we could vote maybe even separately on the amount, if it is something that we agree to.
Yeah.
So we can uncouple those questions.
Yeah.
Right,
or
so,
motions.
so in order to, the next step, if the council
Yeah.
approves, yes, we wanna go forward with this, then we have to pass a resolution
Yeah.
that asks the state, our state representatives
To-
to bring that forward at the state level to get that state enabling legislation.
Yeah,
So we'll need a resolution, so there may be, I have to confirm exactly what that language would be, but that could be on the agenda.
yes.
Could be voted on or could not be voted on, depending on the council's discussion.
Okay. And so we wouldn't necessarily have to vote next on Tuesday about whether or not we're gonna do this. We could continue the discussion.
Right, I think we
Yeah.
could have a motion there, a resolution on the agenda, if the council feels comfortable voting or voting it down or
Right, we could table
tabling
it,
it, you know.
right.
Obviously, you know, I don't know the state's process, I know that there's some back and forth involved, and
Mhm.
from what Oberacker's office had advised us, the sooner
Mhm.
we can get that to them potentially this month, then they could potentially have that on the legislative agenda for this
Yeah.
year.
Mhm.
You know, I don't know what happens if we wait another meeting or two, I just don't know.
If I can jump in too, yeah.
Yeah.
So, as the 18th is the last council meeting we have in the month, and getting it to, both the senator's office and the senator's office,
For the legislative session?
yeah, exactly
Yes.
right. There is a tight.
So there is a time limit that we have to be cognizant of.
If we wanna have this enacted,
Soon.
within the calendar,
Yeah.
then we wanna move on.
Okay. So if I may make the suggestion that we put on the agenda for Tuesday's meeting a resolution to accept this moving forward as a council, that we
Whether we
move-
have a resolution handy.
that we have it ready,
Okay.
and that we include this as obviously as a discussion item, but that we have a resolution
Mhm.
provided that will allow us to vote to accept or deny this.
And we hope it gets in big ugly. You all know what that is, right?
I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, I said, and we hope it gets in the big ugly, which is the state budget. Thousands of things get thrown in there.
Right. Okay, so that's my suggestion.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
And we can, one of the points we can raise is sort of, you know, what do social services do? What, are they exempt from this? Are they included? What is the process? Okay, so our next, item is on the contract with the town for the GIS system. And is there anything that this would be to approve an agreement, or for the mayor to provide an agreement? Is there anything Chris, that you,
I don't know, Greg, you wanna talk about the agreement you prepared?
Yeah, that's attached here. You know, just generally, you wanna just give an overview of what it is, Chris?
Sure, so basically we're providing, GIS and GPS services to the town, using our, existing software, our existing GPS unit, and the knowledge that we have on our staff, to provide, you know, location of existing infrastructure, for the town, and help them with, you know, inventory of their infrastructure, and, at a cost of $8,500 a year.
great,
We've sent this proposed agreement to the town for them to take a look at. You know, they haven't voted on anything yet, I'm not sure if their board has seen it yet, so it might take a little while. We might not have this on the agenda on Tuesday to vote. If you decide to move forward to whether consent or discussion, we might just wait until the town has given any feedback, so in case we have any changes, we don't vote twice. But we're ready to move forward if they are.
okay. It's a little contingent.
So do you want to put that on consent?
Yeah, I mean, we've had this discussion a bit already
Yeah.
about this particular kind of agreement and this, shared services, and there's personnel also to staff this, too. So, yeah, I think consent is probably the location for it.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Okay, so our next item is another shared services. This is for the Board of Elections. This is for a location, to use the Brenner Building. in June, and then for 2 weeks in June, and then October through November of this
Mhm.
year.
The only question I have is publicizing it, because in the past, it's, I believe, at Foothills,
Yeah.
so we'd have to let folks know who want to do early voting.
Yes.
That there's been a change.
Yes.
But other than that, it's fine with me.
Yes.
So how would we publicize that?
The Board of Elections would publicize that. We would certainly share anything that they would like us to, but we leave that up to them, take their lead.
Mhm.
Okay.
Did they approach the city about this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as I mentioned in the write-up,
Yep.
I asked if they typically rent these spaces, and they said in their other contracts or agreements they have with other municipalities and government agencies, they're not charged anything.
No.
We don't typically rent this room to the public. It's not on our fee schedule. You know, it's up to the council whether we wanna have an agreement with them to use it at no cost. There is some cost to us, cleaning, you know, additional cleaning, that kind of thing, while they're there.
That's the room that faces the
pond.
pool, the pond.
You can't swim in that, Don.
No.
Yeah.
I can't swim in anything.
This is in place of Foothills, correct? This
Yeah,
is
for
the new
early
location.
voting, so they.
For early voting.
Voting on the day of, I understand it will
It will
still
still
be
be
at
at
Foothills,
Foothills.
but the early voting would be
Okay,
here.
yep, great, just to kind of clarify that. Okay, so, I see no outstanding questions, on my end, do you have any?
No.
Then I think we
that-
should
that-
move that to the consent agenda.
Yeah, that's fine with me. Yeah.
The other, the next item is it's for the airport, Wallace Road reconstruction, relocation. Which is quite,
So as I understand it, the city would have to pay like almost $14,000, is that right?
So my understanding, and I need to get some clarification, but I understand the FAA has encouraged us to bump this up on our schedule. It's on our 5-year airport capital improvement plan, but because we have access to bill funding that would expire at some point this year, if we didn't apply for this now, that they're recommending we go after that. So there's a $38.75 and a $13,925, so let's say $20,000 or less would be the city's local share.
Oh, okay.
When you combine the two.
I see the two, that's right. I forgot about the other one.
Yeah, I believe they're suggesting we apply for both design and construction at the same time. That, I didn't get a clarification on that exactly. I think that's their intent.
so what I actually think is interesting about this is that it's actually, I think of it as sort of a larger project, part of a larger project, kind of one of the first steps, it sounds like, in terms of
That's right.
expanding the airport.
Mhm.
So, to me, it's, it's quite interesting and important.
Well, I think it's a good project. The question I have is if it's like 14, 15, 16, 17, almost $18,000, where's the $18,000 coming from? Because it hasn't been budgeted, right?
That would come, the last council meeting, it was the last council
Yeah.
meeting, we approved, putting, what is that, $153,000 and change into a new reserve we created, the Airport Capital Improvement Reserve. That's money that was generated, revenue from the logging that we did on the airport
Mhm.
property. So we've confirmed with FAA, because that property was purchased with FAA funds back in the 60s, any revenue generated, even logging, has to be
So it was that
applied
thing
to the
that
airport.
we approved last time.
Right,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
while the
So
council
I
would
was
have
just
to.
gonna say, excuse me.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's right here, and it's on the second page. So
I
budget
missed it.
considerations, a budget
I missed-
amendment to utilize reserve funds for the city's
Mhm.
local share must be authorized. So it's coming from this one
Right,
fifty-three.
when I read this
It's very
earlier,
specific.
I somehow missed that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very
just
good.
to kind
Thank you.
of, there it is in writing.
So
Okay.
it is still unbudgeted, so we would need to have a motion to
Right.
use that money,
But
but
it's
it
not-
is, it's not general fund money, it's.
Right, okay. Yeah.
Specific to the airport, it's kind of what the reserve fund is for.
Right.
You know, the other interesting thing about that is if you look at the map, the little picture,
Yes,
you know, it's more or less a parallel road, and it's cost like
yeah,
over like $700,000.
yes, yes.
It's a lot of money, and it's a very short stretch.
Right,
But I know why it has to be done, so
right.
it's gotta
I recommend we move back to the consent agenda as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you should mention where the money is coming from.
Sure.
If you could do that.
Just to clarify, we don't need action just yet on this.
Oh.
We're kind of just getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, not in a bad way, but just bringing you up to speed on what we're looking at. So it might be the next meeting that we have a motion, but we're waiting on FAA concurrence before we can move ahead.
Oh,
And I
not
would
at
like
the
to,
moment.
I would like to clarify with our consultant if we're applying for design and construction or just design right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because that wasn't clear to me. So we won't have anything on this Tuesday's agenda.
Okay, so no action, I see that. No
But
action.
if you want us to bring it to consent when it's ready,
Yes, I
we'll
think
do
so,
that.
but we can. Okay, the next item is something that impacts us. You and I,
Mm-hmm.
this is the Common Council Chambers update for capital improvement project. We don't need to do anything, this is just sort of an announcement that this might
yeah.
move forward.
Yeah, Carrie wasn't able to come tonight, but she would have given a more in-depth explanation because she's been looking into a couple different potential solutions, and she worked with our purchasing agent, John Janis, to draft an RFP, which we attached here. Look at redesigning this space, including the audio-visual technology to run our meetings effectively.
I don't think we have to spend a lot of money. The main thing is the audio for improving the live feed. You know, I don't, and maybe we could get cushions for the benches or something, but I don't think we have to, we're not making television programs here. It's a public meeting that we want to be able to make sure people can see and hear.
I think there's been some improvements overall to the way that Common Council chambers are configured. And so now, oftentimes, if you were to design a space today, you would have modules of furniture rather than stationary desks and tables and chairs. So I think that could be one improvement that we make.
You can always make improvements, but given the city's fiscal situation, I don't think we should spend a lot of money on it.
I think the thing to think about though is that you could use, this could be a multi-purpose room, it could not just be for the Common Council. So that would be the advantage of having modules to work with, that it becomes a multi-use facility.
Let's see what the numbers look like.
Okay. All right. So that's an potential RFP, Greg, but that's in
Right, yeah.
near
we'll be
future.
likely going forward with the RFP, and that will get us proposals, so we'll have an
Right.
idea of what the cost would be.
So just to bring your, I'm sure you saw this, but I just wanted to show you the scope of the work.
Mm-hmm.
It's a potential RFP, right, so it's
Mm-hmm.
includes potential reconfiguration. Okay, all right, this is our, I think this is our last item. And that is the budget adjustment for downtown support for programming for the summer.
The council already voted on this when we were doing a budget, and we said no. So I see no reason why to bring it back.
Well, I think there are lots of reasons to bring it back, actually. And I think that the most important being that we have a summer season coming up where we are going to be providing a public stage for residents. And I think we need to think about the kind of programming for that stage. The city has a wonderful history of providing funding for that kind of programming, and Fordu is a fantastic organization that I think is absolutely worth our investment. So I think there are actually lots of reasons to bring it back.
Well, it's $60,000, and the council
Yes.
already spoke on it, and they said no.
Some did, and some did not. So I think it's absolutely worth our discussion. At the very least, it's worthy as an issue and as the proposal stands to be discussed again. So, and we have more details now, which I think is really helpful. So I think, you know, borrowing down into a certain position isn't ultimately gonna help.
I read it and I spoke to the mayor about it too.
Mhm.
In fact, I deeply regret the losing my temper, and I apologize to the mayor. But it's $60,000, and I don't think it would be money well spent, especially we would have to dip into our reserves, our savings to pay for it.
I think the importance of this is it is an investment in our main street that is going to yield huge, or at least substantial, potentially substantial benefits for local businesses at a time when they are desperately in need of foot traffic.
Every day last summer, I walked up and down Main Street
Yes.
and talked to the people involved, and there was no measurable positive impact on any of the retailers or the restaurants.
Okay.
It didn't work.
So when we start a project, oftentimes the initial startup can be difficult to measure in terms of results. And I think this deserves absolutely a second go. And I think, you know, if you look at the amount that's being requested, it is totally within, you know, it's actually quite under. If you look at, you know, how the increases have occurred from 18 to 19 to 23, it's actually keeping with, you know, very reasonable amount. And I think this year, the inclusion of marketing is probably going to be invaluable. So I think, you know, a second year is really crucial to have this, see what kinds of improvements we can make and how they can be, how they can yield positive results.
Put it on the discussion agenda.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mayor, did you want to include
We
anything?
do have a
or-
couple of folks here that were, one that is absolutely engaged in all the, Taylor Carpenter, referred to, and you could probably talk a little bit about what the difference was in the programming versus, once you've left, what the program, the outcomes of the programming, maybe as a subject topic.
Sure. I don't have a big formal presentation for everybody. But I think there's a whole variety of values to the service that we provided at the plaza over the summer. There was a measurable increase in foot traffic compared to the year prior. That was pretty significant by my records, but I think more than that, just having the atmosphere be safe and welcoming, a place you want to bring your kids to, a place that families took advantage of. I think that was probably the biggest win. I did last minute pull some numbers. Of that 60,000, Portuguese portion was actually pretty small.
Yeah.
16,500.
Yep.
And we ended up, with that, you got 70 days of Fort Due being out in the plaza, which totaled 560 hours of having at least one staff person out there. And then that money goes directly to Fort Due, and we're able to do our programming out there. So we use that money to then pay for the activities and the equipment and the supplies associated with those activities. So of that 16,500, last year we spent $3,259 on supplies, whether it be bubbles or pogo sticks, or we made cost over $1,000 to build that giant billboard for the community, that community bulletin board that we put out there. We worked with Chris on that a little bit. But that was for the community for a very visible place to put their flyers and put Fort Due's information and city information out there. And that was an improvement in the previous year when we just had everything on a table that got blown away in the wind and got rained on. So we were able to position staff next to that bulletin board and show them all the different things going on in the town.
Mm-hmm.
So that was 16,500. We were willing to revisit the contract and be there less time for less money. We're very flexible. We got our any space on Main Street we'd like to focus on this summer, we can still do some plaza stuff as well. You guys would like to have us back?
I'd like to jump back in, but maybe we might wanna jump in after I'm done. So marketing, right, is the piece that was not a part of last year's go. What we were concerned with last year was generating some activities. We wanted, as you know, to be activating D Street, got a real late start on being able to implement that, from the not being something that we could make happen. That is where, if you were gonna be looking at a lot of action, that's where we were looking at it. We were looking at essentially vendors in kind of a bazaar. That was the conceit, that was the hope, and it wasn't something that we were able to make happen. Okay, so sometimes you just say that's not gonna work. And we moved whatever entertainments and so forth over to the plaza. So the value of that was, and one of the things that I think people haven't really come to understand is that it's a matter of making that space in the heart of your downtown a place that you feel welcome, that's clean. Caleb cleans it first thing in the morning, brings the tables, chairs, umbrellas out. It wouldn't be out there but for the fact that he's dragging them out and put them all back. And that you have a safe space, that you know that there's somebody there who's got a connection to OPD. God forbid that that needs to happen. That is something that he provides. So he's got concierge service happening, so somebody who walks up on the plaza and says, I don't know where I should go for this, that, or whatever, there he is with that. So all of those things, and then of course all those family-friendly games and other things that you've got going on, the water feature and everything else, all that does is makes for a welcoming space in the heart of your downtown, which in and of itself is a success. If that's what you have for 14 weeks in the heart of your downtown, a place that makes you smile, makes you feel like this is a nice place, that's a real plus for the city of Oneonta. We now also have a stage being built, a beautiful little stage being built. And unfortunately, Jeff is not able to join us, he got sidetracked, but we've asked Jeff Doyle from the Foothills to take over that stage. So, you know, if you build something like a stage and you don't have entertainment on, what do you do? You know, so we have this little venue for entertainment on Friday night. We moved it up to Thursday with the expectation that we do a couple of first Fridays that are kind of bigger events. And then you wind up with, you had 7,600 people use the plaza. And by using the plaza, you mean they sat down.
They engaged with what we were offering. It's
Exactly.
actually
They just walked past.
8,700.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't just walking past, it was like they either sat down and talked to us, they sat on the bench, we
Right.
played the game, yeah, it was
And
actual
so,
engagements.
and so what we were lacking was a coordinated effort to connect and cross-promote with the merchants. So the merchants, many of them are one person. If they leave their shop, they have to put a closed sign on their door, right? So for them to be connecting to something a block and a half away, they don't even know it's there. So to have somebody who's engaged in a strategized marketing campaign, working with the merchants to ensure that if we get 8,000 people, let's aim for 12, 15,000 people. Let's have a goal that is greater than what we had. If we're able to bring that level of foot traffic downtown, we have marketing that is connected, coordinated, and strategized, we're going to see the needle move as far as our downtown merchants are concerned, which is also obviously a major part of this. We want to be spurring the economy. But it's also about quality of life. And one of the things we want to do, and as Jim just joined us, is to make sure that the merchants on Water Street have a positive kind of rebound off of a really tough multiple months that they went through. And now we have a really beautiful, potentially really beautiful space to be able to have entertainments there too. So we've designated a portion of money for that. And Jim actually could probably talk to the coordination of that, and I'll be quiet. If you will.
Yeah, Jim Seymour, I'm co-owner of Black Oak Tavern and another place. Been on Main Street for over 30 years, now Water Street for 5+. After we get into the construction, deconstruction, everything that's done, it doesn't matter at this point. it's facts on the ground. That place has been desolate and just, it's been shunned for a couple of years now. And some of it rightly, some of it not so much, but whatever. We're here now, and I would like to see the city put some effort into beautifying that area. Water Street has the potential to be a destination again. I've talked to Mark a bunch about closing the street down on weekends, dealing with the other business owners, finding out when deliveries are coming, things like that, coordinating and making that a real spot. Someplace, we've talked about string lights, excuse me, the tables, garbage removal, all these things that would come about to make that a real place where people can, they come downtown, they're walking, hopefully we're having foot traffic, they'll have a place where they can go relax. It's like, wow, this is a really cool little spot. We don't have a lot of that on Main Street in Oneonta. It's packed full of retail spaces, whether they're actual stores or empty storefronts. There's not a lot of places where people can just sit down and kind of relax without going to Wilbur Park, Neowah Park, places like that. I would like to see Water Street become more of a mecca for, hey, it's a hangout. You know, Muller Plaza used to be that, and you know, they're trying to bring that back. This down there, especially in the evening, sunset, boom, you're looking out over the thing with the lights up. It's an easy transition into more of a nightlife sort of event. There's a ton of potential there, but it requires really a minimum amount of support from the city. Just some actual hands-on, okay, let's do this, and not, you know, talk about it ad hoc meetings and blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm willing to help try to coordinate what goes on down there in terms of like, okay, cool, the string lights, I think that's a great idea, get those up, because it's not very inviting down there right now. Especially after dark, it's, yeah. Yes, sir.
What are you asking the city to do?
As I've talked to Mark, we actually had a list that I should have brought with me, sorry, I kind of ran short on time, it just ended up running down here really quickly. I'm not as organized as I should be right now. Basically, I would say like three basic things. One, just the facade of Water Street needs to be improved a little bit more. Lighting needs to be improved down there. It's not a place that a lot of people are gonna wanna be after dark. It's dim, there's really not much going on. There's Kaler, there's me, there's the Asian place, and the SIP occasionally. There needs to be something that's more inviting on a non, like, if you're not going to a bar, there's still a place to go there and hang out. We've talked about entertainment, whether it be live music, whether it be events, or it could be a ton of things. There's so much.
Excuse me,
Yes.
it was a very simple question. What do you want the city to do?
Oh.
Specifically, what can the city do to
Well,
help?
I've got a list, but off the top of my head, again, provide some of the materials, the lights, garbage removal, whether it be, you know, trash cans, because if we do have people coming down there to hang out, they are going to bring trash with them. I don't want it to turn into a situation where, hey, it's a party and now it looks like trash around here. So just, you know, normal everyday things that, you know.
So, excuse me, so the lighting, so you're talking about those over the street lights?
Yes.
That kind of thing?
Yeah,
I can address that.
Yeah.
The lighting's not finished yet from that project, so there will
okay, it
be
is coming along.
decorative street lights. Now, do they look a little different, or are they the same exact ones we put on Market Street? Chris?
Very similar.
Very similar to what's on
Yes.
Market Street, the black poles that are there now with the nicer decorative lighting. So the
Okay.
poles that are there are temporary. They were back ordered, so by next month or so, I think. Maybe not.
I don't wanna say time
Okay.
frame on that.
I thought they were delivered, but yeah, we won't
Okay,
hold ourselves
again,
to it.
like, that would
And
be
then,
fantastic.
and then the string lighting as well, that's gonna be there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, the
And-
string lighting,
And
there's
trash cans.
street lights, you know,
Yeah.
okay, so
The
those are
trees are also
fine.
going in.
Yeah.
And big bellies.
There will be some
And big
trees
old
and
trash
trash
cans.
cans, so
Okay, is there actual timelines around this, or is this gonna be like, you know, August, September? when
it won't be
it's-
that long.
No?
It won't be that long.
Anyone?
September's the final construction deadline.
Okay.
That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay, well, I would like to
Right.
see some sort of activity before then. I mean, we're wasting an entire season, so to speak, because, you know, that's a summertime thing. Like, it should have already kind of been rolling at this point. Things that Mark and I have talked about, like the ways to block the street off, for safety's sake, and also, you know, make it look inviting, not a dump truck, you know, parked across the.
So is the farmer's market, will that be moving from Deed Street to Water Street this summer?
They're still on D Street.
It's still gonna be a
Street's
Deeds?
Still on D Street.
Okay. Would that help if it was moved to Water Street?
We haven't talked to them about it. I'm not sure if the street would accommodate them, but we haven't talked to
Okay.
them about it.
No, because I know Deed Street, they're very happy with that, they like it. And it's, so far, I think it's worked out well.
The strategy is that we have a vibrant Market Street elevator to, you know, easy walk to Water Street, elevator and an easy walk to Main Street. And that you have these three tiers, essentially geographically, these three tiers of downtown are all active, engaging, and kind of, you know, cross-promotional essentially, you know, one another. So, when something shuts down on Main Street, Muller Plaza, you know, well, Water Street is starting to kick in now, and on and on. So it's about having a more holistically imagined city beyond just Main Street. If that makes sense.
Yes.
I just wanted you to know, I got some feedback last summer towards, I don't wanna say the end of the season, but, you know, several weeks into the season where there were movie nights every night.
Mhm.
I had a number of people say, oh, we've gotta meet at Thursday for the movie, because they got to know that schedule.
Awesome.
And that they put it on their calendar to make sure to attend it. And that was said to me several times. So I just wanted to share that.
We also have people come up to us continually wondering, how do you pay for parking? I think that.
Chris, yeah.
If I may, I just wanna add that I probably walk Main Street multiple times a day, driving, walking. Lunchtime, definitely, I walk past Kaler during the season he was there, and boy, there weren't many times I went by, there wasn't someone there with him visiting.
Yeah, and it's not supposed to be a Disneyland or Disney World experience. It's a safe, welcoming place that you wanna hang out in.
Right.
Maybe there are 4 people there, maybe there are 2 people there, maybe there are 50 people there, depending on what's going on.
Yeah.
It's just a space that you know, you feel like you can use, because there's obviously somebody who's running the show.
I'll ask a general question. I came to corner Judy and Ginny tonight, which I'm going to corner you, so. No, that sounds bad. How do you balance competing interests when making critical decisions? It seems like there's strong philosophies about some of these things, but what's your value system? How do you make decisions? Is there some insight?
Are you asking the
Yeah, I
committee?
mean, council members, Greg, generally, like, what's our process here, as opposed to I like it, I don't like it?
Oh, what was the decision-making around why the council initially voted this down?
Yeah, I'm just curious,
I-
how do you balance competing interests, right? We're
Yeah.
obviously not gonna think the same about things, but
Right.
how do we align?
It was cost versus benefit.
I voted in favor of this initially, so I would be in alignment with the main arguments for having the city provide some kind of programming for mainly the Mueller Plaza, and Fordu being an organization that worked well last year. So to me, it was, you know, and it continues to be, something that is relatively straightforward in terms of decision-making.
So what is
So
that? What is the straightforward piece for you?
Because I believe that I would argue, based upon what I understand of urban space and how to use urban space, that you need eyes on the street. That's a famous phrase
Sure.
that gets thrown around. And what that space, ultimately, when it was used last summer, there were eyes everywhere.
For sure.
And so it was activated.
Energy.
And dense space is an anathema to any kind of economic development. And
So-
so this particular project I see as highly valuable to getting rid of the dead space and to providing eyes on the street.
Yeah. So Don, you said it's a cost benefit, let me just
Right,
throw,
so
let me throw a couple things at you. Killers,
Well, wait,
16.
hold on, you asked me a question, I'll give you my answer.
Right.
That's all right with you.
Yeah, I was just gonna set it up, but that's
Well,
all right.
So, the city, I don't know what the latest number is, but it's roughly $1.5 million, and we're spending, we're spending roughly $1.5 million more than we're taking in. So we're dipping into our reserves. This would be another $60,000. And as far as the way, it's not my judgment that it didn't help the retailers. It's my ward. I go and I walk up and down. I was there every day, pretty much, right? And there was, the cost is $60,000. The benefit to the retailers was not measurable. So spend another $60,000. What's it, from our savings, it doesn't make sense to me.
So you have an anecdotal review there, let me go back to what Jenny said, and I'm just trying to formulate an opinion here, because I don't have one. The messaging piece, like knowing when things happen is pretty important. So what is the line item for some sort of marketing approach? Is there a line item?
Not yet.
Within the context of this,
Jenny.
$10,000.
I just wanna clarify something. Last year, we did not invest $60,000. I just wanna make sure that's clear.
35.
It was 16.5 for you, and then we had some other monies that we spent on specific programs. For example, the holiday tree and, that we had Destination Oneonta. So I think that maybe the grand total came up to maybe around 35.
It was probably a little bit more than that.
I
because of the
thought
activity.
Yeah,
So
I just wanna make sure that.
Can I just piggyback and finish my review of
Well,
this,
well,
so I can keep it straight?
Wayne, can we just let
So
Jenny?
you're saying that
Can we just let Jenny?
at 16,000 or roughly 70 days, $230 a day, we're gonna save our way to 1.5
That's not
with
what I said.
$230 a day savings. I'm just trying to make sense of like how we make these decisions.
So,
Seems like there's a lot of other ways to save 1.5. That's all I'm
how
saying.
this originally got cut from the 2025 budget is that when the council was reviewing the budget and we had a large budget deficit that we had to keep from our fund balance, we provided council a 16-page list of things that they could seriously consider. None of them that we had recommended,
Yeah.
because we knew that it affected quality of life throughout the city for all the areas that we were looking at. And we were looking at parks, we were looking at swimming pools, and we were looking at trash, or brush and pickup. We were looking at, we were looking at positions, we were looking at many different things. But Greg and I made it very clear that those were not our recommendations, but they were things that the council could consider. So during the budget meetings, when they were trying to figure out how to bring that deficit down, I just started going down the list.
Sure.
And I said, yes, no, and we didn't get very far down the list, but when we got to the one area for, they thought that was an easy yes at that time, for
Sure,
that
sure.
meeting. But the council also had many other discussions with different presentations from the activity. I thought, before the presentation, I remembered 11,000 visitors in one of your reports, but I could remember the number wrong. But, so it's a matter of, I think they were looking at where could they save costs without cutting in vital service.
So Don, that's great context. Let me ask you, let
Wait,
me
excuse
redirect
me,
like you
excuse
did.
me.
Wait, Wayne, I'm gonna have to ask you to identify yourself for the
I'm Wayne
purposes
Carrington.
of the record.
I'm hardly ever here, so I'm gonna take a couple minutes. How do you balance, competing interests? I would love, you said it's a straight question. How do you do it?
So right now, round numbers, we're spending about what is the number again?
About 1.5.
$1.5 million. There is items coming up that we're going to be asked to spend more money above that. I forgot the name of the software company. Tyler, that could be $100,000, it could be $300,000. I don't know what it's gonna be. It could be a lot of money though. And there will be other things that come, this is only the third month of the year, where we will have to add to the budget. And in most cases, that means spending more of our savings.
What is the software? I don't know what you're.
It doesn't matter. That's a separate question. But it's something that the city should do, and I think it should be done, but we have to figure out how to pay for it. And so if all of these items that are gonna be coming up, I wanna look at them really closely and say, is this absolutely necessary to spend the money for this? What's the cost benefit here?
I think though the absence here in that analysis is what is your criteria for, is this absolutely necessary? I mean, what's the criteria there? I would argue that in fact dead space needs to be eliminated is absolutely imperative.
It might
But
be
so
another
that's,
way.
you know, what's the
I
criteria?
don't disagree with that, but I just don't wanna spend the money.
Right.
That's my
Right.
answer.
But-
And also, I just wanna add something, fund balance, general fund balance is to use it for things that are non-repeating expenses. But because of the different challenges that we have had since COVID, and with the construction and the different things that have been going on locally, this program may be short-term, maybe 3 to 5 years, and then everything will just happen, with the, hopefully with the economic growth that we're potentially seeing in the Leon area. So investing fund balance in a temporary expenditure is smart-minded.
Yep.
Because you know that you're making an investment for future gain. And, so that's what it's there. But using fund balance for repeating expenses such as salaries and fringe benefits and supplies and things like that, that is not a good strategy. Because you're basically going to the grocery store with your savings account. So.
Could I ask a follow-up question, just because I don't really understand that?
The mayor wanted to speak.
No,
Yeah.
go, I defer.
Okay.
So, like, you just talked about economic growth, you're talking about economic contraction. I'm trying to understand how people make decisions about where we are in that universe.
Well, each
Right.
council member,
So-
and I'm just gonna speak, on their behalf, if that's okay. I have found in my experience that each council member has a different way of approaching their decision. They may base it on something that they think is good, benefits their ward or benefits their people, or that they see the investment in the city, or they may be looking at just cost dollars themselves. And where can we cut costs that's not going to cut a vital service? So I think each individual has a different perspective of how they come to their vote.
Sure, that was my question. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
That's a
thank
good
you.
answer.
And so what I was just piggybacking on all of that, so every council member has their own unique take on, what's an appropriate expenditure of monies, and so does the mayor. And so, from my perspective, we have investable monies, just as you mentioned, not money that you want to, be paying for things every single year, the same expense, that's not appropriate, that should be in the restricted reserves, not the general, the general unrestricted reserves. We have close to, what, 6.7, 6.8 or something like that right now, unrestricted reserves?
And the unrestricted,
Yeah.
around there, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
so what we want to do, so my perspective is, you want to invest in yourself, and ourselves, we're talking about investing in our city. And so, for some things, the return on the investment is going to be clear. For the Tyler Technologies, which is the name of the system that I was referencing, we will absolutely save money down the road, there's no question about it. And so you can extrapolate pretty easily, and you will, I'm sure, what our costs are, and when we'll see the return on that, and when we'll actually see the benefit to our fund balance for the fact that we are a lot more productive, all those things that make us more efficient. Then there are things that the return on investment is a matter of vision and faith. And so when you're talking about quality of life, and when you're talking about the big picture I've just referenced a little while ago, you need to be looking at the future of Oneonta as being more than just the future of Main Street, but rather Main Street and Water Street and Market Street, and even a tie-in to Newa Park, that kind of a vibrant city is one that you need to either invest in that potential and the vision of that potential or not. And so each council member has to make that decision. For me, it's pretty clear. The value of a street that is uninviting is not comparable to the value of the street. Some people, Don is saying that was not a success last year. I really disagree. I know that we moved a number of those little pins when we finally figured out, and then one of the things too, Wayne will back me up on this, sometimes your marketing strategy that you come up with is not the marketing strategy that works, and if you are nimble and smart, you change your marketing strategy, and then you have one that works, and you stay with that. And we did. With our pins, the kids loved the pins. The parents could care less. The parents, we tethered that to a discount booklet. They could care less. They're not looking to save money, but the kids love the pins. When we figured that out finally, we wound up saying, hey, if you want a pin, you gotta bring us back a receipt, right? And so it did move the needle in those last several weeks, and so we know that we'll go into this, but more importantly, we know that without a solid marketing strategy and somebody professional behind that, then you wind up with kind of a repeat of what we just went through. It's like some successes, some failures. You want to have something where your merchants are able to be connected to the success of one component. They all feel that same success. And then that goes. And then for people who are visitors or the people who are residents, there's an enhancement of our quality of life that makes us a place where you may want to visit, you may want to move, you certainly will want to stay. And that's what we're looking to do.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes.
So like the stage, I was on that committee and not any longer, but it's happening, right? So substantial investment, a number of years, how are we marketing that? What is the current, if not this plan, whatever the plan is, what is the plan to get the message to the larger public to attract people, regardless of construction, regardless of paid parking, regardless of all these other issues? What's the contingency plan?
Right.
As a heavily invested downtown business person, I should ask that question.
Yeah, and I think it's a really important question to ask.
Is there an answer?
Absolutely. You know, I think we're in early days, and time is ticking, and so a marketing strategy is
So you gotta come,
needed right now.
Gotta come up with something.
Right. So,
And one last thing, if you're looking at actually having bands play, performers, you know, who've been scheduled, you don't wanna be saying, okay, sometime at the end of May or early June, yeah, let's make this happen, because everyone's booked. You wanna have things that you're gonna be able to promote, with some, lead time for the people who are doing the marketing. You wanna not sit on this for the next couple of months.
I have a follow-up question, I'm sorry, I wasn't really gonna ask this many questions. Performance rights organizations, they take about 1.8% of my annual gross. Do you guys pay a performance rights fee for public domain, or public?
question for the mayor.
Very good.
Or Greg.
Are we paying NSCAD?
ASCAP, BMI, CSAC.
Yes, we pay on it.
So I have a suggestion. Cities incorporated. Corporations can have multiple locations under an umbrella policy. I think the city should put an umbrella for downtown together, and we could come up with the funds to pay for live music everywhere. On a given night, there's competing forces. You know, the city's now competing against businesses in some ways with stages. So.
So are you saying you would be the impresario?
No, I'm saying that it would be great if we could get smart and organize a policy under an incorporated entity that benefited everybody.
I don't know what that means.
Cities
Like
incorporated.
bundling your insurance.
You can have a blanket policy, and corporations like Target will only pay for so many locations to be able to play music in their public space. I think it would be an interesting thing to pursue for everyone involved. Foothills, B-side, Oak, Public Stage, Nags.
That's not really the job of the municipality.
Well, I'm
That-
struggling to find out what the job of the municipality is.
Well, for one thing, I would say that the municipality should not be an impresario. As someone who was once
It has
very
nothing to
briefly
do
an
with that. It's paying
impresario,
for a
it's a terrible
mechanical-
thing for
it's
the
paying for a
municipality.
mechanical license. You're not putting on shows. Impresario presents shows and markets them. We're struggling to figure out how to market them. So it's clearly not about that. It's about paying for a mechanical license. It might be one way to umbrella all of the businesses that create sales revenue, that bring people downtown, that put all of their efforts. Yeah, just a suggestion.
Well-
We could look to see what the possibilities are, to find out if it's even possible.
Yes, that's
I'll
right.
answer my own question from earlier. The way I look at business and the way I balance difficult decisions is I try to find like some market structure so I understand what the rules of the game are and kind of where the advantages are inside the rules of that game. And then I look at boundary conditions. what are the differential equations that are gonna maybe not be the outcome that you want, that you can plan for, and you have contingencies for those things. So, doesn't always work for me, but to answer my own question, that's kind of how I approach things. So, you know, the anecdotal, the emotional is great, but it doesn't really service the greater good. So I think writ large, you know, if we put a little market structure understanding, I love audits, like I appreciate the cost controls. Believe me, this is not, you know, anything to say about whatever the decisions you have to make. I'm just trying to understand what some of the struggles, you know, you're working against. Seems like there are struggles, like what is the philosophy and the approach? Obviously, if people aren't aligned, it's not gonna work out. So,
We're spending more money than we take in.
yeah.
You
But it's
can't do
also-
that.
But I think there's an important paradigm, Don, that you and I fundamentally disagree with, which is this is not a business. This is the principles of the market don't apply, and this is a broader philosophical discussion that we can have
That's
later.
okay.
But I do think it is an important one because it drives a lot of decision making, and I think it's really important for the public to be aware of as well. Like, this is not, the decision making is different for a public entity like a public organization like a municipality. So I think that needs to be taken into
I
account.
understand that.
It can't
I
just be this sort of
understand
broad brush, you know, applying market logic to an organization where that doesn't exist, or it doesn't
I
apply.
understand. Believe me, I
Jim.
understand.
Actually, she had her hand up first.
Oh, Judy, yes.
Yeah, so, sitting here listening to this, I think that this is the first time in a long time I've sat here and listened to a business owner stating the issues that businesses are having, to our finance committee. And I don't think that message gets through directly very often.
No.
So I think it's great that Wayne is here and other business owners are here and other representatives of our downtown efforts are here. And I think they should be heard and not argued with. No matter what anybody's opinions are, let's hold that and let's listen, because we have a problem here in the city that both sides aren't listening to each other, both sides don't understand each other. Wayne's trying to understand, I try to understand myself sitting here and I work here. So I think that this is a great conversation. I would suggest maybe this could be something that happens more often with more business owners here in this meeting, in this committee.
Agreed.
Thank you.
I think so too.
Jim, did you have a comment?
Yes. Does anyone know how many businesses have closed or relocated in the last 2 or 3 years from the Main Street area?
The data on that?
Yeah, anything, like, or even a rough estimate.
I'm
like this.
not
I hear
familiar with that
anecdotally, but I
specifically,
don't
yeah.
know exactly how many.
For
but-
Main Street specifically?
Yeah, we've lost a fair amount of businesses, that's
Mhm.
accurate, right?
And this is, you're saying like since COVID?
Yeah, since COVID, or I think some of the writing was on the wall slightly before that, but yeah, since COVID, and then leading from COVID into the construction, deconstruction, everything else. Part of the issue I have is, I don't know about anyone else, but I was never talked to, asked for an opinion, what our needs were as business owners during any of that going on. It was just, shut up, we know what we're doing, we're gonna do this, you'll just have to survive until it's done, and then it'll be better. It's getting done, I don't know if it's better. Again, we were never asked for input on things. There are definitely things that could have been done better. I think it's good enough, we'll adapt, that's what business owners do. But this notion of like, you know, not investing back into it, we've been taking it on the chin for a few years now. And, you know, just struggling along, you know, not knowing how we're paying bills, dealing with employees, everything else. We've been doing it, front lines there, we know what we need. We're asking for a pretty nominal amount of money, really, in the grand scheme of things.
Specifically the proposal that we're talking about?
Yes, yeah, like any sort of like beautification, whether it's bringing in events, streamlining this. Wayne was talking about, you know, how these different entities function. I mean, when you're dealing with people like us who are, again, frontline business owners there, I know that if we were doing Water Street or Mulder Plaza events, there's a very holistic, like, track of events, because that's like afternoon stuff that would go into the early evening. Wayne's performances, most of his shows are from like 8 to 10 o'clock, you know? You would go from this to Wayne's venue, to my venue. It's like, it's a very natural, holistic way. You guys don't know that because no one talks to us. No one says, hey, do do you guys have a plan, like, what do you see this being?
Yeah.
What could work for you?
Yeah.
And nobody cares, and it's like $60,000, like, oh, we can't spend that money. It's like, well, as more and more businesses leave, that investment would have gone a hell of a lot I don't know if that's a lot, a heck of a lot further in that $60,000 over the course of 5 to 10 years than businesses closing, moving. It's just, to me, it's pinching pennies in a way that's gonna cost you money in the long run.
I interrupt one more thing.
Thank you.
here. So just one more thing.
Yes.
So, yeah, there's a bunch of us who really have cared, and
Right.
you may not.
No, it's not
Yeah.
even necessarily not caring, it's maybe just the framework wasn't there for communication.
But
Purpose
it is,
and
and you
order.
can't change 2 minutes ago, right?
Right.
So, what I'm saying is, we have to be absolutely aware of the impact that so many factors have had on our local businesses, right? From the pandemic on, one thing after another, after another, after another.
Yes.
And now we have a roundabout being constructed.
Yes.
Okay? And our businesses are down, depending on who you talk to, some are doing okay, but many of them are down 20 and 30 and 40%, and that doesn't look like it's getting better for them when I talk to them, right? And there's a level of panic that they have, and there are some businesses that are absolutely on the bubble. And so it is absolutely like a moral, it's our job. We swore an oath, to do our very best for this city. That's what we need to be doing. This city is all the people who live here and all the people who run businesses here. And when we know that they're going to be impacted, and they are going to be impacted, when you're talking about $60,000 out of close to $7 million, oh my gosh, why are we even talking about it? Now, the last thing I want to say is, over the course of years, I was the coordinator of the Downtown Oneonta Improvement Task Force a million years ago. The structure of what was, being done for the monies that were handed to it by the city became a lot more vague over time and a lot less potentially productive for the business.
Could you repeat that? I didn't understand that last part. Like the last couple of sentences there?
I guess what I'm saying is, the proposal that you have in front of you is very specific. Here's what we want to spend the money on, here's our targeted goal for attendance, here's how we think that this works holistically and individually, how that's going to be helping, and I would say that $60,000 is well spent. The fact that a third of it is marketing. We had an economic growth and sustainability task force meeting, and I think a third of the responses were, we need to have a marketing campaign. We need to have coordinated marketing. So for us to ignore that, talk about bringing businesses into the equation, well, bringing people into the equation who are not just, our 9 folks here, but have opinions that are well-grounded, and we did that recently, and marketing. So 20%, rather $20,000 of that 60 is a coordinated marketing campaign. Yes.
Didn't we have marketing money last summer?
We had
It's,
money that was spent on advertising, that's not the same thing.
No.
No, I know that, but I mean, I can't remember her name, I'm so bad with names. She has that newsletter,
No,
wasn't that marketing?
No, Cassandra's.
she was
working
not part
Yeah,
of
she
anything.
said-
Les.
on the other side of all
Very-
that. but
What did
was
she
not
do?
part of it, no.
Last summer, she did something that was like marketing, I thought? No?
No, not till the very tail end of that.
She did work on the other side of all that.
I'm the chair, and so therefore I get to have the last word. I wanted to say, to Judy's point, I think it is invaluable to hear from our business community, and so I want to thank everybody who came today. I really appreciate it. I hope you were able to get a little inkling of decision-making here in terms of,
I know it's
the
difficult.
details.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's difficult.
Yes, and I think also to Judy's point about listening is really vital. I think we don't do enough listening, so I think it's something we should prioritize more as city officials.
Well, one of the things that I've heard from Don, just good feedback, like, if the numbers matter so much, let's make sure that we know what they are. Let's make sure they're clear and that everybody agrees
Absolutely.
and that they're transparent, because it would be great business, you know, downtown to have access to those.
Absolutely.
And to be able to weigh in. And I can tell you I'll be here every week if it's transparent and open, and I can be, you know, of service in some way. My hunch is that maybe we don't really have that audit. You know, my hunch is that maybe, you know, some of the choice, that's why I asked the question that I did out of the gate. It's just, how are we making these choices? If the numbers are there, well, let's make the choices on the numbers, right? $230 a day to Kaler is not gonna close a $1.5 million gap. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Right. Okay.
And if we don't have another plan, then, you know.
Right, right, it's the backup.
Where are we going? What are we
Yeah.
doing here?
There was one more point I was gonna make. I was gonna say that I certainly would advocate listening, and that my disagreement was a longstanding one with Don, not with anyone else in the.
But we're still friends.
Sorry. So if are there any further comments or questions before we adjourn for the evening? No? Okay. I want to thank everybody, and I'm going to adjourn at 6:08.
I have a quick question. So the last item, is that going to the?
Oh, that's discussion.
Discussion.
Hey, I hear our